Hello. Today we will discuss two questions about Cariappa on the theme a soldier's vision versus political restraint. First question. Cariappa critiqued the political handling of military strategy, especially in Kashmir. Elaborate. Field Marshal Cariappa was known not just for his military leadership, but also for his strategic foresight and candid critique of political decisions that, in his view, hindered India's military objectives. His criticism of the political handling of military strategy in Kashmir, especially during the first India Pak War 1947-48, offers important insight into his strategic vision. I'll be dealing with this question into four parts: delay in use of military force in Kashmir, opposition to ceasefire declaration, political interference in military operations, and legacy of strategic thought. Delay in the use of military force in Kashmir, 1947. When Pakistan launched a tribal invasion into Jammu and Kashmir in October 1947, the political leadership was dithering or hesitant to act immediately. As a senior military officer, Cariappa advocated immediate military intervention to stop the advance of the raiders. The Indian government, however, was delaying sending of the troops until Maharaja Hari Singh signed the instrument of accession. Cariappa believed that this delay allowed invaders to capture critical areas like Muzaffarabad and Baramulla, pushing the conflict deeper towards us. Opposition to the ceasefire declaration 1948. In January 1949, India agreed to a UN mediated ceasefire, leading to the creation of line of control and leaving Pakistan in control of large portions of J&K. Cariappa criticized this decision. He said that the decision to halt military operation, as he believed the Indian army was in strong position to reclaim more territory. He argued that if army had been allowed to continue, Pakistan occupied Kashmir could have been retaken. He also viewed that the ceasefire as a premature political compromise had led to long-term strategic disadvantage. Political interference in military operations. Cariappa consistently warned against the politicization of the military decisions. He stressed the need for professional and autonomy of the armed forces and felt that the political leadership often lacked the strategic understanding required for military decision making. He urged for clear civil military coordination, but with space for military leaders to exercise their operational judgment. Cariappa later reflected that the mishandling of Kashmir in 1947-49 laid the foundation for decades of conflict. He repeatedly urged successive governments to learn from the past and adopt a firm and strategically coherent policy on national security. So, to conclude, we can say Cariappa's critique of political handling of Kashmir reveals a pragmatic and far-sighted military mind. He emphasized swift, decisive action and importance of allowing military leaders to conduct operations without excessive political delays or interference. His views remain relevant today in the discussions on civil military relations and strategic management of India's national security. Now we see the question number two. Cariappa referred to UN mediated ceasefire as a grand folly. How do you interpret this statement in light of the political military relationship in newly independent India. Was Cariappa justified or in his frustration? Cariappa's reference to the UN ceasefire of 1949 as a grand folly must be interpreted through the lens of both military pragmatism and the emerging civil military power dynamics in the newly independent India. We'll be discussing this question in three parts: contextual understanding, interpreting grand folly, and we'll discuss was Cariappa justified. In the late 1947 and early 48, Cariappa led Indian military operations to regain control of key regions in Jammu and Kashmir from the tribal militia and the Pakistani forces. Campaign had regained strategic ground. Srinagar was held. The offensive, like Operation Bison, had successfully reopened the road to Leh via Zojila. By mid 1948, Cariappa believed the Indian army had the upper hand and that continued military operations could have liberated the entire state of Jammu and Kashmir, thereby securing both territorial integrity and the psychological dominance over Pakistan. However, under Prime Minister Nehru's insistence, India referred the matter to the United Nations in January 1948. The subsequent UN mediated ceasefire, implemented on 1st January 1949, froze the territorial status quo. As a result, nearly two-fifths of J&K remained under Pakistani control, now called Pakistan Occupied Kashmir or POK. Now, interpreting the grand folly. When Cariappa termed the decision as grand folly, he was articulating a soldier's frustration at a lost strategic opportunity to achieve a decisive military outcome, political interference in what he believed should have remained a military campaign, the long term consequences, a divided Kashmir, which would become the cause of several future Indo Pak wars and continuous insurgency. He believed that the military pressure at that point was yielding results. Political leadership's premature diplomatic approach undermined the sacrifices and the momentum of the armed forces. Now, was Cariappa justified? We can say yes and no. So, first we see why he was justified to say so. The ceasefire locked in the unfinished military objectives, allowing Pakistan to consolidate gains. It validated a precedent of political micromanagement in military strategy. The enduring Kashmir dispute reflects that the political gamble of internationalizing the issue backfired. Now, about not being justified. Nehru's government was working under immense international pressure, especially from the Commonwealth and the United States, to avoid escalation. India, as a new democracy, wanted to project itself as a peace seeking nation. So, the cost of winning war financially, diplomatically, and in terms of lives would have been unsustainable. So, to conclude, we can say Cariappa's Grand Folly remark captures the eternal tension between military operations and civilian political strategy. His frustration was deeply rooted in military commanders' clarity of purpose, which says win the war, then negotiate, and not the other way around. In the hindsight, many strategic thinkers agree with his assessment. The ceasefire not only left Kashmir issue unresolved, but also sowed the seed of future conflict. Thus, Cariappa's warning was not just a soldier's lament, it was a visionary critique of the decision whose repercussions still echo today. With this, we have finished with these two questions. I'll be coming up with more questions next time. Thank you.